Welcome to Awakening Our Compassion, books by the Venerable Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, Vegetarian, Part 1 of 2. Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo is a Buddhist nun of the Drukpa lineage, a branch of the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. After spending 12 years in retreat, meditating in a remote Himalayan cave, she founded the Dongyu Gatsal Ling Nunnery in Himachal Pradesh, India. Her spiritual research has been published in several books, and she is one of a select number of Western women who have been fully ordained and trained in the East. Today, it is our honor to welcome the Venerable Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, who begins by telling us how she, as a young British lady named Diane Perry, came to be a Buddhist nun.
I was raised in London and discovered Buddhism when I was about 18 years old. And that was in the early 60s. When I read it about Buddhism for the first time, I recognized that this was, for me at least, a really true and genuine path that I had been looking for all my life. So therefore, I needed to really learn more about it and dedicate my life to the understanding and practice. So when I was 20 years old, I went to India to look for a teacher. And then I met my Lama, Kamtul Rinpoche, on my 21st birthday, actually, and became a nun about 3 weeks after that.
Diane Perry thus received the name Drukpa Tenzin Palmo and became one of the first Tibetan Buddhist nuns from the West.
So then I stayed with my Lama and his community, had a community of lay people who had followed him from Tibet when he left in the late 50s, and also a monastery with about 100 and more monks. So I stayed with them for 6 years and worked as my Lama's secretary and also taught English to the small monks. Then my Lama said that now it was time to go away and practice. And so he told me to go to this remote Himalayan region called Lahul Spiti. So I went there and I spent about 6 years in a monastery there, which had both monks and nuns. And later I moved up further on the mountain to a small cave, and I stayed there for the next 12 years. Lahul is a very high area. It's about 13,000 feet. So much of the year it is under snow. And it snows normally from about November to May. And so during that time, when I was living in the cave, one was completely cut off from everybody. People could not come. I could not go out. So it was very ideal for doing a meditation practice because one was undisturbed. When there was a blizzard for about 1 week, and so therefore the whole cave got covered in snow, I mean, way up. So everything inside was black. I really thought that because it was a small cave, the oxygen was very limited, and I would probably at some point asphyxiate. I thought, well, this is where I'm going to die. When you think you're going to die, you really focus your life on what's important. And at that time, I realized the only real refuge was the Lama, the teacher. So I prayed very hard to my Lama to take care of me, not only at the time of death, but in the intermediate state in the bardo. And I had lots and lots of devotion. I was very good. And what I got in reply was my Lama's voice inside me saying, rather exasperated, dig out. Fortunately, my door opened inward. I got a saucepan lid and started to dig out. So you had to dig diagonally up And so it took hours, but eventually I got up and then I looked out and then it was still snowing out there. So then I crawled back into the tunnel again and waited another 2 or 3 days and then dug out again. But I realized at that point that, in fact, I was not going to suffocate in the cave, that there would be air. But I was happy that at least in the face of death, I was not panicking. In fact, I felt perfectly at ease with the thought, and just that my devotion to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha and the Lama increased.
Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo now tells us how she came to found the Dongyu Gatsal Ling Nunnery in Himachal Pradesh, India.
In the 1990s, the head lamas of my tradition, the Drogpa Kagyu, they had a big meeting. They said to me, look, we don't have anything for the women, so will you please start a nunnery? And my lama, the previous Kamtu Rinpoche, had also said, I want you to start a nunnery. At that time, I hadn't done anything about it, but this time I thought, this is true, we have nothing for the women. But I didn't really know how to get going.
Then she was approached by author Vicky Mackenzie, inspired by a statement made by Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, published in a Buddhist magazine, stating that she would attain enlightenment in the female form, no matter how many lifetimes it takes. Vicky Mackenzie wished to write the Venerable Nun's biography. Thus, Cave in the Snow, Tenzin Palmo's Quest for Enlightenment, was published in 1998. And subsequently, Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo began to receive requests to teach internationally. Slowly, she raised the funds needed for the nunnery.
I started traveling around the world, both in Asia and in the West, giving Dharma talks. Unlike traditionally, when most of the audience for Dharma talks would be monks, nowadays, most of the audience are lay people and mostly women.
Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo has published several books of her teachings, the first being 3 Teachings, which includes excerpts from talks given in Singapore in 1999. In the lectures, she speaks about mindfulness, Mahamudra practice and retreat, and her lively personality, sense of humor, and compassion shine through her works.
To my mind, the main point is to help people to understand that practicing Dharma is not only when you go to the temple or the Dharma center, when you're reading a Dharma book, when you're chanting, when you're meditating. That is spiritual practice. The rest of the time, taking care of your family, going to your job, and in general, daily life is just mundane activity. This is the way it's written about in books, but it's simply not going to help in our modern world. So I try to help people to understand that actually daily life is our Dharma practice. If we bring to it the right kind of mindset, recognizing that everything we do, if we do it with attention and with awareness and with an open, kind heart, it's all our Dharma practice, as well as formal sitting, whatever meditation we're doing.
Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo's book entitled Into the Heart of Life, published in 2011, addresses the need for Buddhist practices to meet the needs of modern-day life. She writes, the real test of our Buddhist practice happens not on the cushion or in the protected space of retreat, but moment to moment in daily life, particularly when we find ourselves in uncomfortable situations. How do we respond?
The basic problems of our human life are much the same, and the Dharma the Buddha Dharma is relevant wherever we are. It's not something which was useful 2,500 years ago in India. It's also very useful in 2021, wherever we are. It's dealing with the mind, very practical. It's all understanding the problem isn't out there with other people. The problem is within ourselves and our response to other people.
We are grateful to have the Venerable Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo with us and look forward to learning more about her books and his spiritual journey. For more information on the Venerable Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, vegetarian, and her publications, please visit tenzinpalmo.com.
No to vegan. If you are in a hospital with the pandemic, you have only yourself to blame.
Noble viewers, thank you for your gracious presence today. Join us again on Friday, October 14th, for part 2 of Awakening Our Compassion, books by the Venerable Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, vegetarian,